Most people misunderstand quiet men. They see someone who doesn't talk much, who doesn't react, who doesn't try to impress anyone, and they immediately label him cold, distant, maybe even weak. Because in a world where everyone is loud, expressive, and constantly seeking attention, silence looks like a lack of confidence. It looks like there's nothing there. But that's where they're wrong. Because what looks like nothing is often control. While others are reacting instantly, speaking without thinking, and exposing everything about themselves, there's a different kind of man who chooses not to. He listens more than he speaks. He observes more than he reacts. He reveals less than he knows. And because of that, people can't figure him out. And what people don't understand, they underestimate. They think his silence means he has nothing to say. They think his calmness means he has no power. They think his distance means he doesn't matter. But the truth is the complete opposite. He doesn't speak because he doesn't need to. He doesn't react because he's in control. He doesn't chase because he already knows his value. And that's where it becomes dangerous. Not dangerous in a loud, aggressive way, but in a quiet, calculated way. Because someone who understands people can move differently around them. He knows when to speak and when to stay silent, when to engage and when to walk away, when to act and when to wait. While others rush, he calculates. While others react, he decides. While others expose everything, he stays unreadable. And that unpredictability creates something powerful, presence. People start paying attention to him without knowing why. They become more careful around him. They respect the fact that they can't easily read or influence him. Because deep down, they feel it. This is not someone you can control. And that's why Sigma males seem cold. It's not a lack of emotion, it's the presence of control. They feel everything, but they don't let it control their actions. They choose their reactions, they protect their energy, and they move with intention, not impulse. And once you understand that, you start seeing them differently. If this kind of mindset speaks to you, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content on psychology, mindset, and human behavior that most people never understand. Because once you start seeing the world like this, you can't go back. And now let me ask you something. Have people ever misunderstood your silence and thought you were cold, when in reality, you were just in control? He controls his emotions instead of reacting. Most people don't realize how easily their emotions take control of them. One small comment, one situation, one moment of pressure, and suddenly everything changes. Their tone shifts, their mood drops, and their actions become impulsive. They think they're in control, but in reality, they're reacting. And reacting means something outside of them is deciding how they feel and what they do next. That's why so many people lose control without even noticing it. But the Sigma male doesn't operate like that. When something happens, he doesn't rush to respond. He doesn't allow the situation to pull a reaction out of him. Instead, he pauses. Not because he's slow, but because he's aware. He feels the emotion, but he doesn't let it take over. There is a space between what happens and how he reacts, and inside that space, he chooses. And that choice is what separates him from most people. Controlling your emotions doesn't mean you don't feel anything. It means you understand what you feel, and you don't let it control your actions. You can feel anger without exploding, pressure without panicking, and excitement without losing focus. And that level of control gives you clarity. While others are lost in the moment, he sees the situation for what it really is. He's not blinded by emotion. He's thinking, observing, and deciding. This is what makes him dangerous in a quiet way, because most people expect reactions. They expect you to get angry, to defend yourself, or to respond emotionally, but when you don't, it confuses them. It shifts the control. Now they're the ones reacting, trying to figure you out, because they can't predict you, they can't trigger you, and they can't influence you the way they do with others. And when someone can't control your reactions, they can't control you. That's real power. It's not loud or aggressive. It's calm and controlled. It's the ability to stay grounded when everything around you is trying to pull you out of control. It's the ability to choose your response instead of giving it away instantly. There's also a deeper advantage to this. When you control your emotions, you make better decisions. You don't say things you regret. You don't get pulled into useless arguments. And you don't waste your energy on situations that don't matter. You stay focused on what actually moves you forward. Over time, this builds discipline. Every time you choose not to react, you strengthen your control. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you become mentally stronger, and that becomes part of who you are. It's no longer something you try to do, It's how you naturally move. People notice this, even if they don't understand it. They see that you're not easy to provoke, that you don't react like everyone else, and that creates respect. Because someone who controls his emotions controls himself, and someone who controls himself is not easy to shake, not easy to manipulate, and not easy to defeat. That's why the Sigma male seems cold. Not because he feels nothing, but because he refuses to let his emotions control everything. And that level of control is what makes him different, and what makes him powerful. He reveals very little about himself. Most people feel the need to explain who they are all the time. They talk about their plans, their goals, their problems, and even their thoughts without thinking twice. It gives them a sense of connection, like they are being understood and accepted. But at the same time, it makes them easy to read. When people know everything about you, they know how you think, how you react, and how to approach you. And sometimes, without you realizing it, they even know how to influence you. But the Sigma male doesn't move like that. He doesn't feel the need to share everything, not because he's hiding something, but because he understands the value of keeping things to himself. He chooses carefully what he reveals and what he keeps private. He doesn't speak just to fill silence, and he doesn't explain himself to people who don't need to know. And that creates something powerful: mystery. When people don't fully understand you, they pay more attention to you. They try to figure you out. They observe your behavior more closely. And without realizing it, they start respecting you more, because mystery creates presence. In a world where everyone shares everything, the one who stays selective stands out. There's also protection in this mindset. When you reveal less, people have less to use against you. They can't easily judge you, they can't easily manipulate you, and they can't predict your next move. You stay in control of your information, and that gives you an advantage most people don't even think about. He keeps his plans quiet. He keeps his intentions private. He doesn't announce everything he's about to do. And because of that, when he acts, it feels unexpected. It feels calculated. It feels different. Because people didn't see it coming. That unpredictability creates a different kind of respect. People become more careful around him. They think before they speak. They observe him more. Not because he's trying to be intimidating, but because they can't fully understand him. There's also discipline behind this. It's not easy to stay quiet when everyone is sharing everything. It's not easy to hold information when others are constantly talking. But the Sigma understands that not every thought needs to be said, and not every detail needs to be shared. And because of that, his words carry more weight. When he speaks, people listen, not because he's loud, but because he's intentional. He doesn't waste words, and that makes everything he says more valuable. People may think he's distant or closed off, but that's not the case. He simply doesn't give access to everyone. He chooses who gets to know him and how much they get to know. The Sigma mindset is not about hiding, it's about control. Control over what you reveal, who you trust, and how you present yourself. And that control makes you harder to read, harder to predict, and harder to influence. And in a world where everyone is easy to understand, the one who remains unreadable becomes powerful. He observes more than he speaks. Most people feel the need to talk constantly. They jump into conversations quickly, share opinions without thinking, and focus more on being heard than actually understanding what's happening around them. They listen just enough to respond, not to truly understand. And because of that, they miss a lot. But the Sigma male moves differently. He doesn't feel the need to speak all the time. He's comfortable staying quiet and observing. While others are talking, he's paying attention. He notices details most people ignore. The tone of voice, the body language, the small shifts in behavior, and the energy behind what people say. He doesn't just hear words, he reads people. He can tell when someone is confident and when they are pretending. He notices when someone is calm and when they are hiding something. He sees patterns in behavior, how people act when they want something, how they react under pressure, and how they change depending on who they are around. And that awareness gives him an advantage. Because when you understand people, you don't get surprised easily. You can predict reactions, avoid unnecessary situations, and make better decisions. You're not reacting blindly, you're responding with understanding. While others are distracted, he's focused. While others are reacting, he's analyzing. And that difference allows him to stay one step ahead without even trying to compete. There's also control in this mindset. When you observe more than you speak, you give yourself time to think. You don't rush into decisions, you don't say things you'll regret, and you don't get pulled into situations that don't matter. You stay calm, and that calmness becomes your strength. People notice this. They see that you're aware, that you're not reacting like everyone else. And that creates a different kind of presence. They may not understand it, but they feel it. Because in a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the one who understands stands out. The Sigma mindset is not about being silent all the time. It's about knowing when to speak and when to listen. It's about valuing understanding over attention. And once you develop that, you don't just become someone who talks less. You become someone who sees more, understands more, and moves smarter. And that's what makes you powerful. He walks away instead of arguing. Most people feel the need to respond to everything. When someone disrespects them, they react. When they disagree, they argue. When something feels wrong, they try to fix it by explaining, defending, and proving their point. And most of the time, it turns into noise. Endless conversations that lead nowhere, emotional reactions that solve nothing, and energy wasted on situations that were never worth it. But the Sigma male doesn't operate like that. He understands something most people ignore. Not every situation deserves your energy. Not every argument needs a response. Not every misunderstanding needs to be explained. So instead of reacting, he chooses something different. He walks away, not out of weakness, but out of control. He doesn't raise his voice, he doesn't try to win every argument, and he doesn't feel the need to prove himself to people who are not willing to understand. He simply removes himself from the situation. And that silence speaks louder than anything he could say. Because when you don't react, you take the power away from the situation. The other person expects a reaction. They expect emotion, resistance, or engagement. But when they get nothing, it confuses them. It shifts the balance. Now they're the ones thinking, questioning, and trying to understand what just happened. That's where the power is. Because the moment you stop reacting, you stop being controlled. You're no longer part of the emotional game. You're no longer being pulled into unnecessary drama. You're choosing where your energy goes, and that changes everything. There's also clarity behind this behavior. The Sigma male doesn't stay in situations that don't align with him. If something feels wrong, he doesn't force it. If someone disrespects him, he doesn't tolerate it. If a conversation goes nowhere, he doesn't continue it just to be polite. He recognizes the situation for what it is, and he moves on. No overthinking, no emotional attachment, no need for closure from people who don't deserve his time. And that builds strong standards. Because every time you walk away from something that doesn't align, you reinforce your self-respect. You show yourself that you're not willing to accept less. And that mindset changes how people treat you. People notice that you're not easy to pull into arguments, that you don't react like everyone else, that you don't stay where you're not valued. And that creates a different kind of respect. Because when someone knows you can walk away at any moment, they treat you differently. The Sigma mindset is not about avoiding confrontation. It's about choosing it wisely. If something is worth your energy, you'll address it. But if it's not, you won't waste yourself trying to fix it. And that's what makes the difference. You don't stay and argue just to be heard. You leave because you already understand. And that quiet decision is more powerful than any argument you could ever win. He is comfortable being alone. Most people are afraid of being alone, not because they don't have anyone, but because they don't know how to be with themselves. The moment things get quiet, they look for distraction. They scroll, they call someone, they surround themselves with noise just to avoid silence, because silence forces them to face their own thoughts. But the Sigma male doesn't run from that. He understands that being alone is not loneliness, it's clarity. It's a space where he can think without influence, move without pressure, and understand himself on a deeper level. And because of that, he doesn't depend on people to feel complete. He chooses people, he doesn't need them. He can walk away from situations, from conversations, even from relationships, without feeling lost. Because his stability doesn't come from others, it comes from within. And that independence makes him hard to control. People can't manipulate him through emotional attachment. They can't pressure him with approval, and they can't trap him in situations he doesn't want to be in. He moves freely because he's not afraid of being alone, and that's what makes him different. While others stay just to avoid loneliness, he leaves when something doesn't align. While others chase connection, he builds himself in silence. And over time, that creates strength. Because when you are comfortable alone, you are no longer desperate. You don't accept anything just to feel something. You become selective, intentional, and focused. And that mindset changes everything. The Sigma male doesn't isolate himself from the world. He simply refuses to depend on it. And once you reach that level, being alone is no longer something you fear, it becomes something you value. He doesn't seek validation. Most people live for approval without even realizing it. They adjust how they speak, how they act, and even how they think just to be accepted. They look for reactions, for recognition, for signs that they are valued, and without those signs, they feel uncertain. But the Sigma male doesn't operate like that. His confidence doesn't come from others, it comes from himself. He doesn't need people to tell him who he is, because he already knows. And that makes him stable in a way most people are not. He doesn't change depending on who he's around. He doesn't perform to be liked. He stays consistent, whether people agree with him or not. And that consistency creates strength. There's also freedom in this mindset. He doesn't overthink every word, he doesn't chase reactions, and he doesn't feel the need to prove himself. He focuses on his path, his growth, and his values. People notice that. They see that he's not easily influenced, that he's not controlled by opinions, and that creates respect. Because someone who doesn't need validation cannot be controlled by it. The Sigma mindset is not about ignoring people, it's about not depending on them to define your worth. And once you reach that level, your confidence becomes real, stable, and unshakable. He moves in silence, then shows results. Most people talk too much about what they're going to do. They share their plans, announce their goals, and look for attention before anything is even done. And often, that talk replaces action. But the Sigma male does the opposite. He doesn't feel the need to announce anything. He works quietly, consistently, and without needing recognition. While others are talking, he's building. At first, nobody notices. There's no applause, no validation, no external reward. But that doesn't stop him because his focus is not on being seen, it's on becoming better. And over time, the results start to show. Not because he talked about them, but because they're real. And when they appear, they speak louder than anything he could have said. That's what creates impact. Because when someone talks a lot, people expect less. But when someone stays silent and then delivers results, it creates a different level of respect. The Sigma mindset is not about avoiding attention, it's about not needing it. He lets his work speak, and that makes his presence stronger. Because in the end, results don't need explanation. They prove everything. He is unpredictable. Most people are easy to read. You can tell how they will react, what they will say, and how they will behave in almost any situation. Their patterns are clear, their emotions are visible, and their responses are expected. And once people understand you like that, they feel comfortable. And when people feel comfortable, they feel in control. But the Sigma male doesn't move like that. He doesn't react the same way every time, and he doesn't reveal how he thinks. Sometimes he speaks, sometimes he stays silent. Sometimes he engages, sometimes he walks away without explanation. And because of that, people can't predict him. That unpredictability creates a different kind of presence. People pay more attention to him. They become more careful with their words. They think before they act around him, because they don't know how he will respond. And that uncertainty creates respect. It's not about being random, it's about being controlled. He doesn't react based on habit, he reacts based on awareness. Every move is intentional, even if it doesn't look like it from the outside. There's also power in not being understood completely. When people can't read you, they can't easily influence you. They can't use the same approach every time, and they can't predict your next move. That makes you harder to manipulate. The Sigma male doesn't reveal everything, and he doesn't follow predictable patterns. He adapts, he observes, and he chooses his actions carefully. And that makes him difficult to deal with in ways most people don't understand. In a world where everyone is easy to figure out, the one who stays unpredictable stands out. And that's what makes him dangerous in a quiet way. He stays calm under pressure. Most people lose control when things get intense. Stress builds, emotions rise, and decisions become rushed and reactive. They panic, they overthink, and they make mistakes because they're overwhelmed by the situation. But the Sigma male does the opposite. When pressure increases, he slows down. He doesn't let stress control him, and he doesn't allow emotions to cloud his thinking. Instead, he becomes more focused. That calmness gives him an advantage. While others are reacting, he's analyzing. While others are rushing, he's thinking. And that allows him to make better decisions, even in difficult situations. He doesn't ignore pressure, he uses it. He understands that pressure reveals who you really are, and instead of breaking under it, he adapts to it. He stays grounded, controlled, and clear in his actions. People notice this. They see that he doesn't panic, that he doesn't lose control, and that makes him reliable. Because in moments where most people fall apart, he stays stable. And that stability creates trust and respect. The Sigma mindset is not about avoiding pressure, it's about handling it differently. Using it as a moment to focus, not react. And in those moments, the one who stays calm always has the advantage. He trusts his own judgment. Most people doubt themselves constantly. They look for opinions, ask for approval, and hesitate before making decisions. They want reassurance because they're afraid of being wrong. But the Sigma male trusts himself. He thinks, he analyzes, and then he decides. He doesn't need constant validation to move forward, and he doesn't rely on others to tell him what to do. That doesn't mean he's always right, but it means he takes responsibility for his decisions. If he makes a mistake, he learns from it instead of avoiding it. And over time, that builds confidence. Because confidence doesn't come from always being right. It comes from trusting yourself enough to handle whatever happens next. And that's what makes him independent. He's not easily influenced, he's not controlled by opinions, and he's not afraid to move alone. He listens, but he doesn't depend. He considers, but he decides. The Sigma mindset is not about knowing everything, it's about trusting yourself enough to figure things out. And once you reach that level, you stop second-guessing everything. You start moving with certainty, and that's what makes the difference. He chooses silence over drama. Most people are pulled into drama without even realizing it. A small disagreement turns into an argument. A simple misunderstanding becomes a conflict. And suddenly they're investing time and energy into situations that don't really matter. They react, they defend themselves, they try to prove a point, and in the end, nothing actually improves. But the Sigma male doesn't fall into that pattern. He understands something most people ignore. Not everything deserves your reaction. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every situation needs your presence. And not every problem needs to become your problem. So instead of reacting, he steps back. He doesn't rush to argue. He doesn't try to win every conversation, and he doesn't allow himself to get pulled into unnecessary chaos. He stays calm, he observes, and if the situation doesn't align with him, he simply disengages. And that silence is powerful, because when you don't react, you remove fuel from the situation. Drama needs emotion to grow. It needs reactions, attention, and energy. And when you refuse to give it that, it dies on its own. That's control. Most people think staying silent means weakness. But in reality, it takes more strength to walk away than to react. It takes discipline to stay calm when others are trying to provoke you. And that discipline is what sets the Sigma male apart. There's also clarity behind this behavior. He knows that his energy is limited, and he doesn't waste it on things that don't move him forward. He chooses where to engage and where to step back, and that choice gives him control over his environment. He doesn't avoid confrontation completely. If something is important, he will address it. But if it's unnecessary, if it's just noise, he won't give it attention. And that selectiveness creates respect. People notice that he's not easy to provoke, that he doesn't react like everyone else, and that makes them more careful around him, because they know they can't control him through emotion. The Sigma mindset is not about being silent all the time. It's about choosing when silence is the better option, knowing when to speak and when to walk away. And once you understand that, you stop wasting your energy on things that don't matter. You move with control instead of reaction. And in a world full of noise, the one who chooses silence becomes powerful in a way most people don't understand. He sets boundaries without explaining himself. Most people struggle with saying no. They feel the need to explain, justify, and soften their decisions just to avoid disappointing others. They over-explain their limits, hoping to be understood, and in the process, they lose their authority. Because when you keep explaining your boundaries, you make them negotiable. But the Sigma male doesn't move like that. He understands that boundaries are not something you ask people to respect, they are something you enforce. When something doesn't align with him, he says no. Simple, clear, and without unnecessary explanation. And that clarity creates respect. Because people can feel when you're unsure, when you're trying to please, and when your no can be changed. But when your decision is firm, when it's calm and direct, it sends a different message. It shows that you respect yourself enough not to over-explain. There's also strength in not needing everyone to understand you. The Sigma male doesn't waste time trying to convince people why he made a decision. He knows that people will interpret things based on their own mindset, not his explanation. So instead of talking more, he stands by his decision. That doesn't mean he's rude or aggressive, it means he's clear. He communicates what he accepts and what he doesn't, and then he moves accordingly. No pressure, no drama, no need for approval. And over time, that builds strong standards. People learn how to treat him, not because he explained everything, but because he showed consistency. They understand what is allowed and what isn't, because his actions make it clear. The Sigma mindset is not about pushing people away, it's about protecting your space. It's about knowing your limits and not allowing anyone to cross them just to keep peace. And once you learn to set boundaries like that, your life becomes simpler. Less confusion, less pressure, less situations that drain you, because you're no longer trying to be understood by everyone. You're simply being clear with yourself. He moves with purpose, not distraction. Most people are busy, but they're not focused. They jump from one thing to another, follow trends, get distracted easily, and spend their time on things that don't really move them forward. But the Sigma male is different. He doesn't just move, he moves with direction. Every action has a reason. Every decision is connected to something bigger. He doesn't waste energy on random things. He understands that being busy is not the same as being productive, so he chooses carefully. He focuses on what matters, and he ignores what doesn't. While others are everywhere doing everything, he stays in his lane, moving step by step toward his goals. And that creates progress, because when your energy is focused, your results become stronger. You don't just move fast, you move effectively. You don't just do more, you do what actually matters. There's also discipline in this mindset. It's not always easy to stay focused, especially in a world full of distractions. But the Sigma male understands that distraction is the enemy of progress. So he protects his attention. He doesn't let everything pull him away from his direction. He stays committed, even when it's boring, even when it's difficult, even when no one is watching. And that consistency builds something powerful, because over time, focused effort creates results that people can't ignore. While others are still distracted, he has already moved forward. The Sigma mindset is not about doing everything, it's about doing the right things, cutting out the unnecessary and staying aligned with your purpose. And once you start moving like that, your life becomes clearer. You're no longer everywhere, you're exactly where you need to be. And that's what makes the difference. So now you see the truth. What people call cold is not a lack of emotion. It's control, it's awareness, it's the ability to move without being pulled by every situation, every opinion, and every reaction. While most people are loud, reactive, and easy to read, the Sigma moves differently, quiet, focused, and intentional. And that difference is exactly what makes him hard to understand, and even harder to compete with. The reality is, most people will hear this and ignore it. They'll go back to reacting emotionally, chasing validation, and giving their energy to things that don't deserve it. But a small percentage will take this seriously. They'll start controlling their emotions, protecting their space, and moving with purpose. And those are the ones who slowly separate from the rest, not by being louder, but by being sharper. If this video made you see things differently, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content on psychology, mindset, and human behavior that most people never understand. Because once you start thinking like this, you don't go back. And now I want you to be honest. Do people think you're cold because you don't react like everyone else? Or do you think sometimes staying too quiet can work against you? Drop your answer in the comments. I read everything, and I reply to as many of you as I can.